Hey guys, it's Owen from Wrestling Inc. back with another wrestling news roundup. Without any further ado, let's get into today's biggest stories in the world of professional wrestling. William Regal signs with AEW. Former WWE NXT General Manager William Regal has signed with AEW. Regal made his debut during last night's AEW Revolution pay-per-view. He appeared after officials couldn't break up the fight between Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson. In the end, Regal was able to get Moxley and Danielson to shake hands. AEW CEO Tony Khan also announced on Twitter that Regal was all elite. Khan tweeted, quote, "It's official, William Regal is all elite, #AEW Revolution." As previously noted, Regal was name-dropped by Bryan Danielson during the February 23rd episode of AEW Dynamite. WWE released William Regal and several other longtime employees on January 5th as part of the major overhaul of the WWE NXT and WWE Performance Center staff. He spent 21 years with the company. Also during last night's pay-per-view, AEW signed former WWE NXT North America champion Swerve Strickland. Vader announced for the WWE Hall of Fame. Vader is going into the WWE Hall of Fame. WWE announced today that Vader will posthumously be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame's class of 2022 during WrestleMania 38 weekend. There's no word yet on who will induct Vader, but we will keep you updated. The former World Heavyweight Champion passed away on June 18, 2018 at the age of 63. WWE previously announced The Undertaker as the headliner for the 2022 WWE Hall of Fame class. He will be inducted by WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon. The 2022 WWE Hall of Fame induction ceremony will take place on Friday, April 1st from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. The event will air live on Peacock and the WWE Network after the WrestleMania 38 Go-Home edition of SmackDown goes off the air that night. Backstage news on Cody Rhodes' WWE status. On the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that plans have once again changed regarding Cody Rhodes. As of this past Friday's edition of SmackDown, he was on the internal books, with creative being ready for his return. However, now that is uncertain and his future is up in the air. While the situation with Cody Rhodes and WWE is not considered to be over, it is a case of waiting and seeing how things play out. WWE thought they had the former AEW Executive Vice President, but right now they are unsure about that. There have been conflicting reports regarding the former three-time TNT champion from the moment he left All Elite Wrestling. Cody Rhodes himself is yet to make any form of public comments regarding his future plans in wrestling or if he plans to stop competing altogether. It remains uncertain at this point whether he will be returning to WWE. During the recent media call, Tony Khan went into detail about why he didn't pick up Cody Rhodes' option. He had the ability to extend his deal with the company but did not want to keep somebody who didn't want to be there. Quote, "I don't want to get too deep into it because a lot of this is personal between me and him, but I tried to reach a longer agreement with him beyond what we had for the option years," he said. And it sounded like at one point I think we were going to. Honestly, when we couldn't settle on it, the last thing I wanted to do was keep somebody here that isn't going to want to be here. So it didn't look like we were going to get a longer deal done, and I would have loved to have done it, and I have a lot of respect for him. But when we didn't come to terms on that, it made it pretty clear where things were going to end up. That being said, I've said nothing but respectful stuff about Cody, and I will continue to. CM Punk takes major shots at WWE Hall of Famer Goldberg. AEW star CM Punk believes WWE Hall of Famer Bret Hart should have been the one making millions of dollars going to Saudi Arabia instead of WWE Hall of Famer Bill Goldberg. Speaking to reporters at the post-AEW Revolution media scrum, an emotional Punk burst into tears while discussing the Hitman. Quote, "I love Bret Hart," CM Punk said. His career was cut short and it's a goddamn tragedy because there are people who go over to Saudi Arabia and get paid millions of dollars that should have been Bret. The topic of heart came up when Punk recounted the story of a young AEW wrestler making him cry at Sunday's pay-per-view event. Quote, "I'm sick of crying," an emotional CM Punk said. "Today has been brutal. The first time I cried today was when they showed me my ring jacket, which had a silhouette of Larry. Then, after my match, someone came over and said to me, 'I got into wrestling because of you. I saw Straight Edge Society and was blown away. I went to WrestleMania to watch yourself and Rey Mysterio. That made me cry.'" Punk added he would give up his career in a heartbeat to Hart. Quote, "I just feel super fortunate and grateful that I got a second chance," Punk admitted. "I'd give it up in a heartbeat to give it to Brett. I just love that MFer so much. He's the greatest of all time." Ahead of his dog collar match against MJF, Punk turned back the clock by stepping out to his Ring of Honor entrance less than a week after the news broke of AEW purchasing ROH. Quote, "It was important to do that," Punk said. "I loved ROH so much. I can't explain how happy I am that my footage is in good hands. I literally feel like my baby is in someone else's hands who I know will raise the child right. It won't get made into a tab on some SHITTY app that's hard to navigate, and the boys don't get paid anything off it. When it comes to paying homage to myself, obviously I love professional wrestling very much. To come back and still be able to do this, it's not just about coming back and doing whatever the F you want. It's doing whatever and being cocky enough to know that your way is heard, to have somebody that listens to you, can take an idea and make it even better, just to have an open dialogue with everyone in the locker room. It's just so great that you don't have to beat your head against the wall. I don't have to tell someone that ideas are SHITTY and they have no idea what they're doing. Everything is so great." Backstage news on creative changing for Vince McMahon and Pat McAfee. On the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that creative for the Pat McAfee storyline changed slightly. On SmackDown, Austin Theory appeared, slapped the commentator and set up their match. However, this was different from whatever the original plan was. Of course, Vince McMahon had been rumored to be competing against Pat McAfee. He is still in the angle, and it is unknown if things will become a handicap match or if the WWE chairman will simply be at ringside. However, Vince McMahon is seen as the key to that match overall. Because of that, it is expected that he will be getting introduced to the angle in the near future. Originally, it was set to be Vince versus McAfee, but Austin Theory was always going to be the man taking the bumps. The WWE chairman recently appeared on Pat McAfee's YouTube show, which is where he offered him a match at WrestleMania. Orange Cassidy reportedly suffered shoulder injury at AEW Revolution. On the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, Brian Alvarez noted that Orange Cassidy injured his shoulder at AEW Revolution. The popular star was the only serious injury on the show. It is unknown how serious the problem is going to be at this point. Dave Meltzer did add that Ricky Starks is okay following the powerbomb onto the ladder bridge. However, for Orange Cassidy, his injury had nothing to do with ladders. He appeared to pick up the injury when being launched out of the ring by Keith Lee. Cassidy was sent flying over the top ropes onto Christian Cage and Starks on the outside, but he went further than them and took a rough landing. That was the last involvement that Orange Cassidy had in the match, as he was checked on by doctors at ringside. However, the face of the Revolution ladder match was eventually won by Wardlow. He will now receive a TNT Championship shot down the line against either Sammy Guevara or Scorpio Sky. Those two men are competing for the gold this coming Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. Tony Khan promises he won't overhaul Ring of Honor like WWE did with NXT. During the post-AEW Revolution media scrum, AEW President Tony Khan spoke in length about his decision to acquire Ring of Honor and how he plans to run two wrestling promotions at the same time. Khan compared the situation to WWE overhauling NXT to NXT 2.0 last year, but not before asking the assembled wrestling media a question. Quote, "What NXT do you guys think is better, the original or 2.0? When the reporters responded unanimously with original, Khan would ask a follow-up question, quote, "Which one do you think is more conducive to Vince McMahon's vision of pro wrestling?" As expected, the reporters felt the 2.0 brand was closer to McMahon's vision of pro wrestling. This led to Khan explaining why he felt WWE made the right call in revamping NXT. Quote, "For better or for worse, if they're not going to change what they're doing to the main roster stuff, wasn't it a more efficient process? That way, at least you're not calling up people you don't believe in," Khan stressed. Does that make sense? Prior to making the NXT analogy, Khan assured Ring of Honor fans that he wouldn't tweak the presentation of the original product that original Ring of Honor fans had been accustomed to for close to 2 decades. Quote, "In the past, Ring of Honor has been more catered to a hardcore fan base. They never had the kind of distribution we've been fortunate to get through TNT and TBS, which has really set us apart from every other wrestling company since WCW went under. I'm not going to totally disclose my plans for the Ring of Honor roster, but there are lots of opportunities. There are lots of great wrestlers out there and here who are not under contract. Ring of Honor has an amazing history, and I do plan to respect it. I do want to keep it alive. That's one of the reasons they were excited to work with me. Joe Koff and others told me that respecting the legacy was important to them, and that's why they were so happy to see it end this way. One thing, I plan to bring in a bunch of young wrestlers, and they already have a bunch of them. I think we're very successful here and plan to continue doing very well with it, bringing in wrestlers who can work both ROH and AEW eventually." So what are your thoughts on today's Wrestling News Roundup? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling Inc. and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.